This is a big deal, right?
Oh, it's huge. Really, it's a broader financial equation in terms of generating positive revenue growth and positive ROI and getting more efficient with the resources that you're using.
Why are you seeing that, for example? Is it for budget?
No, it really has nothing to do with budget. It's really all the things I just said. Ultimately, if you're focused on measuring the wrong things, you're missing the bigger picture.
How to best really utilize AI.
I'm just one person. I try and be a voice of reason in a crazy world. I don't know if people are going to listen or not.
Our guest today is Jeff Pedowitz, the president and CEO of the Pedowitz Group, a leading marketing consulting firm that specializes in revenue marketing transformation. With over 2 decades of experience, Jeff is a recognized expert in driving growth by integrating marketing technology, data-driven strategies, and optimizing customer experience. He has worked with Fortune 500 companies, helping them leverage marketing automation, AI, and advanced analytics to enhance customer engagement and achieve measurable business outcomes. Jeff is also a prolific speaker, author, and thought leader in digital marketing and revenue operations. Welcome to SEO All on Air, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. I'm very excited to dive into these topics, and let's get right in. One of the things we talked about kind of off air was what you call a shifting focus, right? From MQLs to revenue impact, right? And I want to get your thoughts on how CMOs are moving away from traditional metrics like MQLs to a more holistic approach that really focuses on revenue impact and collaboration within sales team. This is a big deal, right?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, for the better part of close to 20 years now, lead generation, having marketing generate qualified leads has been a dominant part of the lexicon for any company that's trying to do digital marketing well, at least particularly within B2B anyway. It's been a big area. And you know, for many years it worked until it didn't. And for the lack of having anything better. But there's so many things that are making that less effective. First and foremost is the sheer number of channels and touch points. You know, when this first started, it's predominantly email marketing and your website. Social channels were nascent, and there wasn't a high use of video. Really, YouTube was the only established channel. There was no Instagram or TikTok, but all these channels have emerged since then, which has made the number of different entryways and passageways that a customer prospect will navigate through during their buyer journey infinitely more complicated. The second thing that's been changing is the B2B buying process. So lead generation works really well when you have a buyer, you know, someone that you can target. But in most business transactions today, 7, 10, 15 people are getting involved in that process. And all of the architecture, the CRMs, the marketing automation platforms of the world are not set up to do account-based engagement and handle an aggregation of multiple people going through a buying cycle at the same time. And even if you do get a salesperson to attach that contact to the opportunity, which is rare in of itself, they're certainly not going to attach 8, 10, or 15 people to the opportunity. So it's very quite difficult, if not impossible, unless you have a data lake and a team of analysts that can export all the data and do complicated analysis on every single opportunity. There really is no way in real time or close to real time that a marketer can establish attribution and effectively measure MQLs. And then the other problem with that is leads is a part of the revenue process, but it's not revenue in and of itself. So the sales is being measured on quota attainment and achieving a revenue target. Marketing is being measured on a certain number of leads. They don't actually work together. They're in conflict with each other, right? So marketing could say, well, hey, I submitted, I beat my goal for MQLs, but if the company misses its revenue number, then it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So for all these reasons, there's been a growing movement by marketing leaders to move away from using the MQL and trying to establish multi-touch attribution and focus more on revenue growth and ROI. So we have an existing client growth number, we have a net new client number, and how much are we spending in marketing against each of those? And that's how you measure success, you know, in terms of ROI. That doesn't mean that you stop measuring your marketing mix. You still want to measure your channel performance, your ad spend, et cetera, so that you can optimize the mix. But optimizing your channel delivery is not the same thing as measuring attribution and lead conversion.
Exactly. Are you seeing, or do you think there's any differences in this shift within industries? like less or more in B2B, B2C, or is you seeing it across the board?
Well, again, it's more talking about leads. I'm not saying B2C doesn't use it at all, but much less. Usually they use it more if it's a considered purchase, maybe like an automobile or a home mortgage or something along those lines. But for e-commerce transactions, direct transactional engagement, the concept of a lead doesn't really apply. Within B2B, you have, of course, high tech and software and financial services have kind of led the field anyway for the last 20 years, pushed the envelope. And then you have the laggards, manufacturing, education, several other industries and utilities that probably are maybe 10 or 15 years back. So they haven't kind of got to that point yet, but it is starting to move across many industries within B2B.
Yeah. I can see, envision some kind of quote unquote old school CMOs being a little reluctant to make this change.
Well, I mean, it gives them something that they can hang their hat on. They can at least measure leads, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that those leads actually convert to revenue, but this is the big disconnect and why CMOs, so many of them fail to understand why they don't have success in the boardroom and they're continuously being let go because they're not able to talk in the language of business, and they're measuring a false metric. And while certainly generating leads and getting interest in your products and services, I'm not saying that's not important. I aggregate that too. We all have to generate demand for products and services, but really it's a broader financial equation in terms of generating positive revenue growth and positive ROI and getting more efficient with the resources that you're using.
Yeah. And it's a good segue into the next topic, which is, and it's something that I talk to CMOs all the time as well, like you do. It's that the quantifying, right? And it's how do you justify the value to CEOs, CFOs, right? You just mentioned CFOs, boards. And then that kind of albatross is the average, CMO tenure, which hovers right around, 2.5 to 3.5 years, give or take, when you look at it.
That would be true in the bigger companies. Let's say Global 2000. It's probably even longer than that. You start going down market. Right. It's actually much shorter. It's probably 15 to 18 months.
Which is even more problematic. Yeah. So how does the CMO, kind of ties back into what you were saying about revenue impact, right? And in close collaboration with the sales team to then when they're in front of the board and the CEO and CFO and say, you gave me X amount in my budget. This is your ROI.
Well, and I mean, that's really where it comes down to. And it's the easiest number to measure. Good, bad, or indifferent. I know what you spend on headcount, what you spend on program spend and technology. And then I can see how much growth came from existing clients and how much net new revenue we got this year. And then I divide it. And so if you did better this year than you did last year, you were a good steward of the funds. You got better ROI. If you went down, you weren't. It's really, I'm not trying to oversimplify the job of marketing because it's incredibly complex, but in terms of how boards and CFOs and CEOs think about the effect of marketing, it's actually relatively simple. Just in terms of it's a quick value equation.
Yeah, so many CMOs I talk to, it's that how do I justify, the spend? And it's, what you're saying about it's, to me, part of it is to what KPIs are you using in the first place? Are you still using vanity metrics? That's not going to work.
And many are impressions, right? And so, these numbers have a place, but at different parts of the organization. I think I always encourage CMOs to think about your KPIs as a pyramid. That top small sliver, that's the executive type of KPIs. It's revenue, ROI, right? And as you're starting to move down that pyramid into your marketing organization, my SEO person or my website person, yes, they care about traffic, impressions, conversion, time on site, because that's relevant to their job. And then those metrics have to convert into a higher level metric, so it starts to aggregate up. So it's not that you don't track these things. You just have to track them at the appropriate level within the organization. And tactical operational type of metrics really don't have a place in the boardroom. And they're just not going to resonate with anybody there.
Yeah, exactly. There's just too, I don't know. I use the word fluffy.
Well, they are. I mean, look, I think one of the biggest challenges, even with an SEO all these years is, well, of course, website traffic is important. Of course, time on site is important. I mean, these are, important things. Bounce rate's important. But what's even more important is how well it converts. into your pipeline and funnel. So, and if all I'm doing is generating traffic and I have time on site, but no one fills out a form and I don't have any net new pipeline coming in, then what's the point, right? So then it becomes a vanity metric, right? That's like saying I have a billboard and 1 million people see it every week. And, or I air the commercial on TV and, this many people saw it. And okay, so how many people called the 800 number? How many people went and filled out the offer? I mean, that's really that next step that a lot of people forget about. Same thing with PR. People are like, well, you can't measure PR. Well, the only people that say that are the legacy people that are in PR. Like, that's not true either. You can measure PR. And so it's really about pushing through that perceived, inability to measure something. Anything can be measured. It's just coming up with the right meaningful things that are going to translate into business success.
Correct. I mean, it's not to make this really overly simplistic, but it's connecting the dots. When they come in the top of the funnel and they go to the bottom of the funnel, and what does it ultimately amount to, literally and figuratively? So I'm interested too. You mentioned something earlier about the evolution beyond marketing attribution models and how you're seeing CMOs abandon the complex attribution models, which we know there's no shortage of those. Why are you seeing that? For example, is it for budget? Is it just?
No, it really has nothing to do with budget. It's really all the things I just said. It's multiple channels and number of combinations, multiple buyers. I've been using this example for years because I think it's the most relatable. So we all go grocery shopping weekly, regularly, right? So let's say you and I go every Sunday before or after church. You go to the right, I go to the left. You start in produce, I start in dairy. We're going up and down the aisles. We check out. Now, does it matter that you went right or that I went left, and you pick up the eggs last versus I got the peppers last? Or is it more important that we both went to the store, we both spent $250 in our cart average per week, And so now, if you're trying to optimize site traffic within the store, understanding patterns of where we walk, where we stop, that kind of helps figuring out how to lay out the store. That's not the same thing though as attribution. So ultimately, if you're focused on measuring the wrong things, you're missing the bigger picture. What I want to know is, do you shop regularly in my store? And how much do you shop each week? So that's really and so it's just kind of up-leveling the thoughts about attribution is and isn't. And the buying process is only going to get more complicated.
It's just kind of like, maybe it's a hard question to answer, but I'm curious your thoughts is, why did it get to that level of complexity in the first place?
Well, you've got many more channels. So again, 20 years ago, Facebook was 3 years old. YouTube was 2 years old. The smartphone was just released. Not even, right? 17 years we've had the smartphone. There was no TikTok. There was no Instagram. Video marketing was nascent. Buying patterns within organizations were simpler. People tended to have more authority, and budgets were singularly more consolidated under several people. Even a manager in a bigger company could make a buying decision. Then you enter procurement departments, multiple levels of buying, budgetary approval, multiple influencers or stakeholders. Many companies are moving more towards a consensus type of culture where everyone needs to have an opinion. Of course, there's a lot more MarTech, which also amplifies channels, content, different positions. I mean, 20 years ago, there was literally less than 10 applications that you could use, and now there's over 14,000. So all these things make it so much more complicated to measure. The job of marketing is harder than it's ever been because you have to reach your audience through multiple combinations of channels, and no two people or two companies are buying or evaluating things the same way. So that's why focusing on attribution, who gets credit. The other problem with that is it's the original idea behind attribution is that marketing can have an equal seat at the table with sales. But what it's done is it's only created a further divide because both teams are arguing over who gets credit when that is completely irrelevant, when they're supposed to be working together to drive revenue for the company. Arguing about who gets credit is fool's gold. And it's a complete waste of organizational time and resources. And then the communication, the collaboration breaks down.
Yeah, it's a very common, I've worked at really large companies, and it's very common to have that kind of internal competition, if you will, between sales and marketing. And while some may label it as a healthy competition, I think it's anything but, because to the end user, it can get very confusing as you're dealing with a salesperson and a marketing. To the outside end user, they don't care who gets attribution. Just give me the product or the service.
Right. And the customer doesn't care, which is why the funnel has nothing to do with our customers at all. It's a self-serving mechanism that we use internally to forecast demand. Now, I'm not saying that from a management discipline, I'm not saying abandon forecasting. I mean, we certainly want to understand what our pipeline is. It helps us manage our resources and grow a company. But we need to understand that has nothing to do with our customer. So if we truly want to say that we want to be customer-centric, customer experience, we need to develop other models that are more inclusive, that are pairing up with the customer wherever they are on the journey. It's not just, of course, we want to sell. We're in business for a profit. I get that, but divorcing that from just focusing on the profit, divorced from what the customer thinks or feels, often sends us off in errant paths.
Exactly. Hey, sorry for the interruption. We're going to get back to our show in one quick second, but stay with me. If you're in the need for anything SEO and or link building related, you need to do yourself one quick favor. You need to go to the website that's on the screen right now, stanventures.com. Go there, tell them Steve O sent you. The rest will take care of itself. Trust me. You can thank me later. So you mentioned MarTech a few minutes ago, and I think you've coined it. I don't know if this is your term, but the great MarTech consolidation. And we've both been around long enough to remember when MarTech and then the MarTech stack came into vogue, right? You just keep building and building, right, on top. Now it seems like the trend is going the other way. Like, wait a minute, we have X number of tools in our stack. Do we really need them all?
Yeah, I know for years, of course, MarTech Tribe, we're giving out awards for your stackies, right? How good your stack is. Maybe they should give out awards now for how well you broke your stack and dismantled it, or consolidated it. It could be like the revived stacky, I guess. The reality is untethered, unchecked.
Yep. The
bigger the company, the more tech they have. I mean, most companies have made their SaaS easy to buy. You throw it on a credit card, and then you have big companies and multiple divisions and multiple people. The stuff gets in because it doesn't go through IT anymore. It's not going through central procurement. And so it ends up being a hot mess. And, you got VCs and private equity partner companies are putting money into all these tech companies and pushing, sell. You need this, you need that, you need this. I mean, so after a while, how many freaking applications, can you use? It really reaches a point of diminishing returns. And then you've got all these windows open. The original idea behind marketing automation before MarTech was a thing is, as a marketer, you can go in one place. You can orchestrate your journey. You can manage your demand cycle in a application. The intent originally anyway was not that you would, when Eloqua and Marketo and some of those others came to market, the idea wasn't you're going to have 20 tabs open on your browser and you're going to be going back and forth. It's like you would log into that one place. But that's what we have now. And most of these get highly unused. And companies continually make the same mistake from a resource and budgeting perspective. They buy the tech. They think the job's over. They're now doing whatever the application says it will do. They underinvest in resources. And rather than really while you can scale with technology, it's a fallacy to think that you need less people to run it. You actually need more people. But what happens is marketing ops and rev ops is underfunded. You get one person that has to run 7-8 different platforms. And then that person goes on PTO or leaves the company. And now the company's dead in the water because there's no documentation. No one knows what was going on. There's no backfill. And so the organization just trudges along. So, there's, Gartner has the hype cycle. I feel like MarTech in some ways are in the trough of disillusionment right now, before we get back up to the path of enlightenment again. And look, 10, 15 years, the industry's had incredible growth. I think, though, it's going through its own Waterloo moment right now. The pandemic created an artificially accelerated demand cycle for tech firms because everybody was trying to digitally transform. Governments were pouring money in and everyone bought technology even faster than they would have. And so you come out of the pandemic, you don't have any more funds propping you up. You realize that your own sales and marketing cycle is weak and demand softening, but now you're sitting on 20 to 30% more tech than you had 2 years ago and you're not even using it. And you're like, whoa. Okay, we gotta rethink this. So that's why we've seen almost a freezing, if not a decline in tech spending over the last 2 years while companies are consolidating and they're downsizing. And this is going to continue for the next year or two. And then, of course, the reports came out last couple of weeks with NASDAQ. Even though tech companies are pouring billions of dollars into AI development, the reality is there's way more hype than reality. The applications will get there eventually, but they're not there yet. And customers are like, we're not going to spend more money for this. It's like what you say it can do. It's not worth us paying more for our subscription, at least at this moment in time.
Yeah, it's the AI is what I always refer to as the elephant in the room. And what I hear from CMOs, depending on who I talk to in the industry they're in, is either I'm all in or I don't know what to do. I want to dip my toe in the pool. Yeah, I dabble in ChatGPT kind of thing, or somewhere in between. I get the sense there's still some reticence, right, among CMOs and marketers on how to best really utilize AI in marketing. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I mean, now to give marketing credit, I'd say more than almost any other department, they've probably been more willing to experiment, and they are using ChatGPT, Jasper, Writer, ChatSonic, Claude, platforms like that to help with their content copywriting process, which is a start, and they have been able to get more efficient. But they are not yet. Very, very few have really looked at, so if I look at all my processes for how I go to market, manage demand, manage my customers, the other things I'm doing, how do I AI enable that? How do I AI enable customer support, my search, my media buying, my event management, and on and on and on? They're not doing that. But there are, even if you just use large language models and conversational AI, you could significantly improve how you're managing those functions today. And there are already some tools on the market that can AI enable many of those other processes. But most people are just not there yet. And I think there's been acceleration over the last year. People are now working more with Gen AI on a regular basis, but that's as far as it goes. The very big companies who have the pockets, they're spending money on developing LLMs for themselves, but that's a very tiny sliver of the market.
Exactly. The majority of the brands in the world are one, they don't have the pockets to do that, right? And so they're they're hearing about these companies doing it themselves. It probably even adds to their anxiety.
It does. And there's tremendous pressure from boards, CEOs, and CFOs to reduce costs and get operationally more efficient and to use AI to do that. And in some cases, It's definitely possible, but it's not a panacea. It's not like there's a magic AI button or an AI app that's going to go across the organization and automate everything. However, for the CMO that's business savvy and thinking about this, and you can be purpose driven, you can month by month, quarter by quarter, start to improve your operational efficiency with AI and be slower on the trigger, to go out and buy more tech. Because even though there's 50 or 60,000 some odd applications now that claim to be AI built, AI driven, whatever, it's going to be like the .com era all over again. Most of these are not going to go the distance. There's just too much of it, So experiment, spend a few $1,000s, 20,000, buy some tools, play around a little bit, kind of see, and just keep working on improving the process, and then just take your time, and you can achieve organizational efficiency by making smarter budgeting and planning decisions too. It's not all about AI. You have to strategically look at your headcount, where they're operating, where the overlap is, how effective the things that you're doing are actually working. And you have to be prepared. If your boss hasn't told you yet that your budget's going to get cut, you have to do more with less. You should be thinking about it anyway. If you're operating under the expectation that you're going to get more money year after year, that's just not going to happen in most cases. It's happening in some places, but for the most part, that is not the new reality.
No, and that's the operative word is reality. You're really kidding yourself if you think you're just going to get X% more every year just because it's a new year.
Yeah, I personally think the days of marketing getting 10 to 14% of revenue are over. Because a lot of that was going towards tech anyway. 95% of marketers' budgets was going towards tech, and now that we're seeing the tech move back towards IT, because marketing generally has not been able to prove that it can be a good steward of technology on behalf of the organization. Well, that's a couple of points right there, not to mention press. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see budgets kind of settle into more the 6 to 8% range in the aggregate. And then, of course, certain industries like services and others will continue to be 1 to 2%. I just don't see it improving, particularly in industries where the margins are tighter. There's just not enough there anyway to go towards marketing, no matter what you want to do. And services is one of those industries.
Brand building versus performance marketing. When I saw this as one of the things you wanted to talk about, I really piqued my interest because this is a very hot button topic for me. And I saw, maybe a couple of months ago, at least the trend I saw was that marketers in general are moving more towards a performance marketing model versus brand building. And that kind of saddened me, although I understood it, if that makes sense. So are you seeing that, or what kind of
Yeah, I mean, again, and I had a good back and forth because I wrote about this a while ago, and someone said, "Hey, in LinkedIn, we're having an email conversation back and forth." And we're like, well, that he felt that was giving up on performance marketing to just go back to focus on brand, and that was a cop out. And that's not what I'm saying. Though I think you can't stop being performance driven, but you also, I think we over pivoted to only focus on performance over the last 5 to 10 years and forgot about brand. And now more than ever, because there's so much content, so much clutter, so much confusion, cycles are longer. The ability for marketing to establish the brand voice and create the emotional connection and build the brand promise through the customer experience is even more important now. And then have to amplify that through performance marketing. So yeah, I am starting to see marketing leaders have that realization that they over pivoted and now have to sort of move the pendulum back towards the middle.
Yeah. And overlaying all this is what we talked about earlier, is about the measuring of this, right? I mean, brand building, I can see a CEO, CFO rolling their eyes going, well, brand building, isn't that those vanity metrics? So why are we doing that? Performance is straight to the bottom line.
Right. But the good marketing leaders will connect the two. You can't, it's like what I said earlier. You can't just say, well, you can't really measure brand. How do you measure brand? Like, you can measure brand. You can measure anything. Like, you just have to be willing to sit down and think it through and make the connections. You can't just say, well, we're going to do PR and brand and events, but you really can't measure those. I mean, that's ridiculous. So you do have to be able to make that connection and then prove it out, and then, the other thing too is, for whatever reason, many marketing leaders are reluctant or weary or fearful of the CFO, when in fact, many CFOs are great partners, and instead of trying to view it as an adversarial type of relationship, like the finance is telling you what you can and can't do, partner with them, understand how the budgeting process works, collaborate, because finance does understand the models for what the drivers are. Yeah. And the leaders that I've gotten to know that really work well with finance discovered this a long time ago, that finance in many cases can be outstanding partners. Because if you've got your CFO batting for you, in terms of then you're going to get a lot more things rubber stamped through the board through your CEO, because the CFO tends to have, at least in terms of financial matters, a lot more credibility. They're a lot more risk intolerant, and so working with them throughout the year is a lot better than waiting for your fate to be decided, by finance and then throwing up your hands like, oh, well, they cut my budget again. Well, yeah, but how much are you working and building that relationship throughout the year?
Yeah. And part of that to me has always been an education, meaning you have to kind of teach the CFO at least a little bit about what you're doing when it comes to marketing. Otherwise, they're going to be left to their own, and they're going to assume they know what marketing is. Well,
and like CEOs and boards who think they know more about marketing than the marketing leaders do, but that's par for the course. But that's also why, it's that book, What Got You Here Won't Got You There. It's usually meant for people that get promoted for the first time into management. But I tell CMOs to go back and read that book, because it's the same principle. Like, you think that when you're in a CMO, you're going to do all this fun marketing stuff. Like, that's your team's job, not your job. Your job, you're playing politics. You're helping run the business. You're a change agent. You're working with business leaders to figure out new revenue models and do a number of things. Yeah, you get to be informed, but no, you don't get to be really the marketer anymore. And for many, that's like a big wake up call.
And that's there's an ego play there.
Sure, if you've spent however long you have. I mean, I think the average CMO first time is in their mid to late 30s, something like that. So by that point, you've spent 10 or 15 years and building your career, and you probably do know a lot about marketing. That's how you got the job. But now the job is different. And so now it's really more about developing your team so that they can do the things for you, even if they wouldn't do it necessarily the way that you would do it. And you now have to work on developing that next level set of skills: corporate finance, right? Business planning, strategy, change management, innovation, partnering with sales to drive revenue. And that's the role.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting here. You said you're seeing a focus, a little more shift on upselling and cross-selling, right? It's, we all know the age old adage of it's cheaper to, keep a customer than get a new one, right? That'll never change. But you're saying you're seeing a bigger focus on that?
There is. I mean, it's kind of interesting, at least for most B2B organizations for years. I mean, most of us all have a decent amount of recurring revenue from our client base. Anywhere from 30 to 80% of our revenue each year comes from our clients. Yet we disproportionately spend most of our sales and marketing resources on getting net new. Now, that doesn't mean that getting net new isn't important. We all need new clients to grow. But I was fascinated why that was out of whack. And then again, coming out of the pandemic, as things have shifted, sales cycles and new buying has really crawled, slowed down. So, B2B cycles, used to be anywhere from 30 to 90 days, and they're now, 65, 70 to 120 days. And they're just getting longer and longer. It's getting harder and harder to bring new clients in the door. So there's been a shift in a realization. Oh, we have a captive install base. The cost of growing this customer is much lower than the cost of getting a new customer. So given that we're getting squeezed in all these other areas, it makes a lot more sense to double down and really try and grow and activate our customer base because they're the ones that are loyal. Why it took, 50, 60 years to get to that point, I don't know. But I guess it's just the combination of market dynamics that have gotten people to have a wake up call.
Yeah, we could spend the next hour trying to figure out why it took so long. But the fact is we're here, and it's long overdue. It's just common sense. It's like, I already have a relationship with you.
It is. But people throw words around like, we want to be customer centric. We want to build a customer experience. They don't really know what that means. They're not doing that. There's a big difference between having good customer service, where you're responsive to someone's inquiry or complaint or so on, and actually designing your products, your services, everything around the customer. Yep. Very, very few companies do that because that takes an intentionality and a purpose from the highest levels of the organization to drive it with sustained operational excellence through all the departments. And most companies just are not set up that way and can't get there. So, but that's why there's a big gap. But for us as the customer, we all want that Amazon or Netflix experience. That's what we've come to expect. And we measure then every touch point, whether it's fair or not. We want to have that sense of immediacy. We want the company to know who we are. We don't care that our data is in 17 different places and they're using all these applications. We're seeing the company for their logo. That's what we're remembering. Hey, ABC company, I had this experience. And it shouldn't matter if I was on this channel or that channel, online, offline. I want a consistent experience, and I want you to know who I am, especially if you're asking me for all this information. If you're tracking my cookies, you're asking me to fill out forms, you're doing all these things, but you still don't know who I am. I've been a customer for 8 years. You're still trying to sell. You're sending me new prospecting emails and I'm getting new direct mail. Like, you don't even know I'm your customer. Really? I've been a partner of yours for 10 years, but you don't even know I'm a partner. So it's just like, do you guys even talk? And the answer is no, not really, because companies are under so much pressure to drive demand. Well, we got to get more lead campaigns out the door because we need more leads. Need more leads. We don't care if it's actually resonating or if it overlaps with something else. We just know we have to hit this number. And so the madness goes on and on and on. And everyone's dialing up the heat because not everyone, but most people they're struggling. So the answer then for most people is we'll just do more. We'll just do more of the stuff, even though it's not working, but we'll just do more. We'll make more calls. We'll send out more emails. We'll hire more salespeople. Surely that must be the answer, versus taking time to rethink it, reorganize it, and be more purposeful driven.
From your lips, pal, because there's so many companies who I call it the default. Like, okay, blast 20,000 more emails out. If that didn't work, blast 50,000 more, like it boggles my mind. It just does. But I'm just one person. I try and be a voice of reason in a crazy world. But I don't know if people are going to listen or not. Well, you're being modest, and you're a brilliant marketer. By the way, we're coming up against, and I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to tell people, tell me about your podcast and where they can find it.
So I've had a podcast for about 8 or 9 years now called CMO Insights. And I interview CMOs and just really kind of get to know them on a personal and professional level. And it's been a lot of fun. I've gotten them at all different stages of their careers, big companies, small companies. And really, you can learn a lot with each episode. So you can find it on our website, pedowitzgroup.com. It's available on Spotify, iHeartRadio. And then also, we have a new subscription service called onyourmarket.co. And you can find it there too.
Called CMO Insights.
CMO Insights,
right?
Yes.
I love it. I love it. I am a subscriber, and I highly recommend you do the same. Jeff, I can't thank you enough. I knew this was going to be a really free-flowing, great. It's one of those you look at the time like, wow, what a great conversation. So I cannot thank you enough, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm the guy from the video you just saw. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Now do yourself a favor. If you haven't already, subscribe to our content. Believe it or not, unconfirmed rumors and reports, you will see an increase in 20% in organic traffic just by subscribing. Okay, maybe not, but it's fun, right? But do yourself a favor, really. Subscribe to our content. You won't be sorry. Thanks.